Good evening. This is Alicia McCracken, and this is my presentation for my Level 4 tip. I decided to focus on epidemiology. I teach healthcare science, and this is something that I address in my intro class. So when I'm dealing with my freshmen and my sophomores and I bring up epidemiology, I find it to be extremely interesting, but they tend to get really bored with the subject of researching epidemics and pandemics, and they get lost in the data and the numbers, and I really have trouble maintaining and retaining their attention. So it tends to be a snooze fest for them a little bit. The other problem I have when we do these types of projects in epidemiology is that I find that they have trouble paring down the information and sifting through it. So they end up regurgitating facts. They end up really plagiarizing a lot. This becomes a really good unit where I have to focus a lot on what's plagiarism and what isn't. So I wanted them to be able to research and delve into epidemiological data without getting lost. And so I decided to use Goose Chase to create a virtual scavenger hunt so that they could sift through the data and figure out exactly what they needed to know about their epidemics and pandemics. This created a conceptual solution for me to use Goose Chase because it created a very creative hook for the students when they're actually doing their Goose Chase, which we'll see in a little bit. They feel like it's competitive, they get to work with a team, and they're not so hesitant to kind of dive in among all that data and research to find it. What I liked about using a virtual scavenger hunt through Goose Chase was that it forced a multimodal um, perspective for them. Whereas in the past, I get just a bunch of written data, a bunch of written words. Using Goose Chase will actually force them to use images as well as text. And that helps them have a little bit more enduring understanding and know what they're reading. It also allows for collaboration as a team through Goose Chase. I set them up as a team of 4 to 5 students. They have to communicate in order to complete the Goose Chase and then complete the final project that the Goose Chase is an aspect of. And of course, critical thinking skills are necessary for this as one of the other 4 C's in order to translate what they find in their Goose Chase into results that we're going to talk about here in just a second. My technological solution for using Goose Chase is that it provided a mobile learning platform, which really draws them in, hooks them. They love being able to use their devices. The other thing is Goose Chase makes them sift through the data very quickly because it simplifies it. So they get very fast findings and they don't get bogged down with things that they don't need to worry about. And again, like I mentioned before in the conceptual solution, it is multimodal. So they're giving me text answers and they're also giving me photo answers, and that will really help address the different learning styles in the class when they're sifting through epidemiological data. All right, so what does it look like? How did I implement it? Well, first I made my Goose Chase. So we're going to check this out. And I created a Goose Chase called Finding Patient Zero. And the group will be created, the teams will be created, and the team will be given an assigned epidemic. So, for example, let's say Team A gets the Ebola outbreak, the Ebola epidemic, and let's say Team B gets the Spanish influenza of 1918. So it doesn't matter that they're researching different epidemics, it's who can complete all their missions first. And the goal that I set in the lesson plan was to complete the mission in one class period. So you'll see some of the missions that I've added here. I want them to understand the historical context, the originating city. Those are text answers. You'll see right here that they have to type something. Why historical context is important, just for those that are not familiar with healthcare, is it helps them connect. Like, was it wartime? Which means that it would spread faster. People were in closer proximities. So that helps them kind of create a critical thinking connection between the history surrounding the outbreak. The originating city, I went back and forth. Should this be a dot on a map? Should this be a text answer? So I decided on text. But they do have to screenshot the image of the pathogen, which I think is interesting because they have to know the name. But I also want to see a microscopic photo. Some of the other ones that I got creative and wanted a photo instead of text were, for example, circumstances. So if crowding of a slum or tainted animal meat were the circumstances that led to the outbreak, they're not just going to tell me that. They're going to try to figure out how to show me that in a picture. And my hope is that that will lead to students remembering things for a little bit longer time. Mapping the spread, they'll have to create their own map of the spread of the disease and screenshot that as well. And here, signs and symptoms, they're not just telling me what a patient looks like, they're actually showing me. And then by having to find that photo, they're going to remember, they're going to have that image as well. And then the mission that's the most points, 1,000 points, is patient zero. That's what this is all leading up to. So a lot of these, we don't know who patient zero is. They're not going to be able to Google who was patient zero for the 1918 Spanish influenza. But what is out there is all of this contextual data that I've had them research up until this point that kind of gives them an idea of who patient zero could be. So this is actually going to be a fictional answer, but it's going to be based on the research or the other missions that they had to do. And it has to connect in order for them to get all of the points. Okay, so going back. So what did I do once they finished the goose chase? So after I put them in a small group and they were assigned this goose chase, they were also given a website to start it. So this is how I implemented it. I created like a project website called Finding Patient Zero. So once I break them up into their groups, they'll be directed to this website, and I actually kind of gave them a task and put them into an authentic situation, gave them the due date. All my photos are from Wix.com, just throwing that out there. So I gave them a task and kind of addressed them as a disaster planning and prep team. Told them that the database at the World Health Organization has completely crashed. All the research files have been lost, and basically it's up to them to put together research files on all the previous pandemics and epidemics. So it kind of gives them just a little scenario to make it a little fun. So their task is they have to, do this scavenger hunt to find the data that's still out there, put it together on their own website, and write a narrative on who patient zero could have been. So you'll see their objectives are over here. Complete scavenger hunt to collect data, write your patient zero narrative, and then present the information in a website. So while my goose chase was the focus of my tip, I decided to make it one piece of a multi-level project. So then they can click process, and the group is also going to be divided into roles. So you're going to have your epidemiologist, your nurse, your physician, your microbiologist, and this tells a little bit about what they have to focus on in the narrative. This also creates a little bit more collaboration and communication between them, because not just one person can write the narrative, they all have to submit some information. So they start off here with a goose chase. You'll see step 1. And so they'll have to download the app. They have to search for the game, Finding Patient Zero, that I have, that we looked at the missions earlier. And then as a team, they have to complete that scavenger hunt. And then once they do that, they can move on and they can write their narrative, and then they can put it all together on a website in order to present their findings. And so without the goose chase, I find that the data becomes they don't understand what they're looking at. They're just regurgitating. They're just trying to figure out what sounds good, and they're not really learning the meat and potatoes of the epidemic or the pandemic. And so I'm really hoping that the goose chase will help them pull out the main points and also kind of give them a fun way to dive into epidemiology. So I put this picture on there because I want to give this as an example of how I'm hoping the implementation of Goose Chase will make their findings more authentic. So for example, if I asked them to include in their research or when their missions was how was it treated or how was it prevented, what were some public health preventions that were put out there. If they were just reading the material on the website, the answer I would get would be people wore flu masks. But because they have to give me a picture of how it's prevented, then they find this, which I got from time.com, that this is the flu mask of the early 1900s. So if they were doing like the 1918 Spanish flu, this is the type of flu mask they would see and be able to find. So it just gives an idea of how creating or finding the photo makes for a better finding than just reading and writing. So I hope you enjoyed how I'm going to use Goose Chase as my tip. And that's all for now. Thanks.